I'm James Mathers, a cinematographer and founder of the nonprofit cooperative Digital Cinema Society. AdoramaTV requested some educational content, so I thought we might explore some of the basics of shooting single-camera motion picture coverage. Having worked with emerging filmmakers over the years, I found that there's often a lot of confusion in regard to maintaining proper screen direction and how to avoid crossing the line. Shooting proper coverage will allow your shots to cut together smoothly and keep the audience from becoming confused about where the characters are in relationship to each other. Kindly appearing on camera will be writer-producer Risa Cantu and filmmaker marketing consultant Michael Valinsky, who will be photographed by cinematographer Canon. Later we'll add DCS executive director Charlene Mathers and also have editor and visual effects expert Christopher Scott Nell, who will cut together some of the shots so we can see examples of what to do and what not to do. As everyone takes their place, let's talk about how this language of motion pictures developed. Except for the occasional theater in the round, performances over the centuries have been set up on a proscenium stage, which serves as the frame through which the audience observes the performance. As motion pictures evolved, we've kept with this general plan, but it is complicated by actor and camera movement, and by the various shots that we choose to tell our story. Basically, if you can imagine you are covering a live theatrical performance, you would be free to move the camera around 180 degrees to cover it from any angle where the audience might normally view the stage. The characters on the right side of the stage, or camera right from the audience's point of view, would then be looking to the left at the characters on the opposite side of the stage, and vice versa. If, however, you move the camera past 180 degrees, then when you cut those images together, the characters would appear to be looking in the same direction instead of opposite directions, like they should be if they were facing each other. That would be known as crossing the line, the stage line, or the 180-degree line. I've seen less experienced filmmakers break out paper, pencils, a compass, and make diagrams and measure degrees to make sure they don't go past 180. But it's really much simpler. All you really need to do is keep in mind that if two characters are relating to each other, they need to be looking in opposite screen directions in order to be appearing as if they're looking at each other. We'll shoot some examples, then cut them together to illustrate the point. I've asked Cameron to set up a master shot. That's a shot that's wide enough to capture the action in its entirety, and the purpose of the master is to set up the geography and the characters' spatial relationship to each other. Now the camera and or the characters could be moving throughout the shot, and various positions in the scene might call for a submaster. But for the purposes of this short demo, we'll keep it simple and have the two characters standing still facing each other as if they were in conversation. Note that Risa is on the camera right side of our master shot, and she is looking screen left to Michael. This is a relationship we'll want to keep throughout the coverage. Risa will be looking screen left, and Michael will be looking screen right. I'll now ask Cameron to line up some coverage for this demo scene. Let's start with Risa's coverage. That would be over the shoulder shot, where we'll be over Michael's right shoulder, and Risa will be looking from right to left. This shot is obviously called an over the shoulder because it includes one character's shoulder in the foreground of the other shot. If Cameron tightens the frame a bit, we would be looking at what we call a dirty single, with just enough of one character in the foreground to be unobtrusively felt in the presence of the other's coverage. For ease of setup, all shots from one side of the scene, over the shoulders, close-ups, etc., are usually shot before turning around to shoot the other side of the scene. So Cameron, let's now zoom in a bit and truck slightly to the left to get a closer eye line. Sometimes with large or multiple cameras shooting simultaneously, we can't physically get the off-camera actor close enough, so we cheat the eye line and give the actor that is on camera a mark to look at, perhaps a piece of tape inside the matte box. The general rule is that as you go tighter, you try to get the camera on a closer access to the line between the two actors. All the while, Cameron, or a camera assistant if he had one, would be keeping track of the lens sizes by noting millimeters and the subject to camera distance, so that when we go around to the other side, we could match the size of the shot. In complicated scenes with lots of characters interacting with each other and with camera and or actor movement, We also count on the script supervisor to keep track of which screen direction each character needs to maintain with each other character. As a simple example, let's go back to the master and have a third character, Charlene, enter the scene and stand between Michael and Risa. Charlene would then be looking screen left to Michael and screen right to Risa. Now is when it gets a little confusing for beginners trying to not cross the line. If we were to go and get coverage from Charlene's point of view, we'd be going well past the 180 degree of the proscenium stage, and we would be looking back into the audience. But it's really about the line that each character defines in looking to the other. So if Charlene is looking screen right to Risa, then when we come around for coverage of her from that angle, we simply shoot Risa looking the opposite screen direction, or screen left. The same logic applies no matter how many characters are in a scene. Take, for example, a poker game where each character has an established eye line to each of the other characters. Just remember that when shooting coverage between each set of two characters, they need to be looking opposite screen directions. This concept of looking opposite screen directions can even apply when they are not in the same master, as for example, if two characters are having a phone conversation. It's the general rule of thumb that they should be looking in opposite screen directions to cut together as if they were looking at each other. Now, an experienced filmmaker can sometimes get away with breaking these rules, and there are ways to flop the screen direction within a scene. For example, if we were to start over Risa's left shoulder, and she is looking screen left to Michael, and he is looking screen right to her. If we then were to dolly during the shot to be over her other shoulder, she would be looking screen right to Michael, and he would be looking screen left to her. When we turn around for her coverage, we would need to match that change in screen direction at that very point in the scene where we made the change or flop screen direction. So now let's break and cut a few shots together, and we'll see how they work, or don't. For our demo purposes, Christopher has cut together a short sequence. We start with the wide master, then into the coverage, getting ever tighter as we progress through the scene. That's typical, but not mandatory. For example, you might want to start with an extreme close-up and then pull out to reveal the surroundings and the other characters. Now let's see what happens when we don't follow the rules of screen direction and cut a sequence together where we purposely cross the line. We'll start with the wide shot, but when we cut to the coverage, we'll have Michael and Risa looking the same screen direction. I think you'll agree it's a bit disconcerting, and it seems as if they're not looking at each other. As previously mentioned, you don't always have to follow the rules, but when you break from traditional coverage, it should be with purpose and have creative intent. Each scene in a movie should propel the story in some way, and each shot within that scene should also be motivated toward that end. We've gone over some basic concepts of screen direction, but coming up with compelling coverage is a collaborative art that is best when the director, cinematographer, and actors are all working in concert. Now that the tools of the craft are so accessible, it's easy to get practice by shooting and cutting together your own little movies. If you're an aspiring filmmaker, there's really no excuse not to. If you'd like to check out DCS, please visit our website, digitalcinemasociety.org. We try to be a resource to educate filmmakers and help them keep up with the quickly evolving motion picture technology. Thanks, everybody.